We are now live.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for joining us today. It is the Cabinet meeting held here at Abbey House on the 10th of November 2023. I'd like to welcome you all and start the agenda with any apologies. No apologies.
Chair, there's no apologies, but for the benefit of the public listening, could we take a roll call, please?
Of course, thank you.
So, in alphabetical order, Councillor Sue Call.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Coleman.
Present in the room.
Councillor Andy Crawford.
Present in the room.
Councillor Deborah Dewhurst.
Present in the room.
Councillor Lucy Edwards.
Present in the room.
Councillor Neil Fawcett.
Present in the room.
Councillor Andy Forsham.
Present in the room.
Councillor Diana Legova.
Present in the room.
And Councillor Helen Pickhills.
Present in the room.
Thank you. We also have joining us remotely the Scrutiny Committee Chair, Councillor Catherine Foxall. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Steve. So moving on to item number 2 and minutes. I take it everybody's had the chance to look through the minutes. Yeah. And is everybody happy to agree the minutes of the previous meeting? Yeah, thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that you'd like to share now? Thank you. 4, urgent business and chair's announcements.
Chair, there's no urgent business, but for the benefit of those in the room, in case of a fire emergency evacuation, we go out of this door, turn right and through the fire exit.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Item number 5, public participation, which I believe we have a member of the public joining us.
Yes, Chair, we have Mr. John Salmons joining us online, who wishes to ask a question regarding item 7 on the corporate performance report. Mr. Salmons, can you hear us?
I can. Can everyone hear me okay in the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Good morning, Cabinet. I have a question for the Leader of the Council, if I may, regarding the Climate Action Plan performance report on the agenda. My question actually touches on a few of the initiatives mentioned in that report. Now, I appreciate this is a Q1 report. I'm not sure why Cabinet is only noting it now halfway through Q3, but it does mean some of these initiatives have moved on since the report was prepared. For example, item SD4 talks about replacing end-of-life waste vehicles with electric vehicles. It's marked amber in the report, but I think it would be fair to mark that red. Now South and Vale have decided to spend £1.5 million buying a set of diesel waste vehicles instead. Obviously, electric waste vehicles are readily available. Many other councils have already adopted them, but apparently the technology in the range just isn't there yet to operate these vehicles in our rural districts. And it seems the electrification of the grounds maintenance fleet is an even more distant prospect. At scrutiny just a few months ago, we heard there are simply no electric vehicles available to meet the needs of that service. When those vehicles do eventually become available, just like the waste vehicles, our rural districts will present an added challenge. Costs are also likely to be prohibitive. Just look at the mind-boggling £300,000 the council are spending on a single electric food waste truck. The other blocker to adopting electric vehicles, of course, is the lack of suitable charging facilities. But as per SD5, I understand officers are looking at a large brownfield site for a new waste depot, which will obviously require extensive vehicle charging infrastructure. Which begs the obvious question why, as per SD7, the council is pressing ahead with plans for an entirely separate depot for the grounds maintenance service, an industrial use they're proposing to dump on a master-planned residential estate in Didcot, in place of the public open space residents were promised when they purchased their homes, and are now trying to justify on the basis it will include EV charging facilities for the service's non-existent EV fleet. Common sense suggests that by the time the grounds maintenance service eventually adopts EVs, they could simply make use of the waste depot charging infrastructure. Surely this option would streamline operations, reduce costs, and most importantly, remove the need to tarmac over land set aside for a wildflower meadow on Great Western Park, a morally bankrupt act of environmental vandalism, which remains fundamentally unacceptable, no matter how many EV chargers you tag onto it. So my question to the Leader of the Council is quite simple, really. Has this option of the grounds maintenance service using the new waste depot charging facilities been explored? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Summons. I note your question. I hope you can still hear me. And I will provide a written response in consultation with the Cabinet member and officers. Thank you very much. So, if that's noted, thank you, Steve. We will move on to item number 6, recommendations and updates from other committees. And I believe Councillor Vauxhall is here to address us from scrutiny. Hi, Councillor Vauxhall.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for letting me speak this morning. Nice to see you all. So I think we had my main comments. Well, I've got 2 main comments to make. The first is on scrutiny meeting on 2nd of November 2023, which we met last week. We discussed several items, and I think the overall response from our scrutiny committee, as I hope you've sensed from our comments, was a really positive one. We appreciated the reports. They were well written. There's obviously loads of good work being done across the teams that we discussed. We mainly discussed the planning enforcement and the comms team, and I know also from emails and conversations subsequent to that meeting that the teams are taking away our comments and looking at how they can integrate some of the requests we made. And really the requests we made were on the basis of, we really want to help publicise and help the public understand the good work that our teams are doing, to make sure that that is known, but also that to continue to challenge where teams are already performing well, but to make sure that they do continue to win awards, continue to be seen as sector leading teams. So that was all great. The other item I just wanted to mention quickly in my role as scrutiny chair, which has really just come up this morning, and as Mr. Summons has just mentioned, this morning it's been reported by Oxfordshire Independent that our councils had warned to brace for public unhappiness about the decision that was made to purchase the diesel waste vehicles. And I would want to really, as chair of scrutiny, and also having heard from some of my scrutiny members, that there is a real sense of unhappiness about that decision, and particularly in the context of the discussions we had with the maintenance team regarding a kind of direction of travel purchasing electric vehicles. I do note that that decision was taken on the 10th of March, previous to the elections and previous to this council's term, but I do know that also in the 27th of February joint scrutiny meeting that concerns were raised about that decision. And I would really kind of suggest that it's a good example of where cabinets, really we would ask that cabinets do take note of scrutiny's recommendations and the expertise that's on scrutiny committees. But yeah, to note that this is a different term, and I would hope that particularly the discussions we've had regarding the maintenance team, that we will hopefully start to make different decisions as new vehicles become available. And I hope that we'll have a chance to discuss this more when the BIFA contract comes to joint scrutiny in 2 weeks' time. So I think that's all from me. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
So, Councillor Mark Cotton, I'm the portfolio holder for environmental services and waste. Thank you for your comments, and particularly I would agree with you on the reports that go to scrutiny, including the ones that I've been involved in. I thank the officers for that. I think we need to be fairly clear about what we are talking about in terms of contracts. So the piece that was in the media this morning is about waste and refuse vehicles, collection vehicles, and what went to scrutiny was about grounds maintenance vehicles. which is are two different things that I'm sure you're aware. Ideally, we would want to have non-diesel fuels for both sets of vehicles, refuse and also grounds maintenance. The difficulty we have, particularly for the refuse, is the range that we require and also the load that's required. How much we have to collect in. We have got one electric vehicle which we bought for the food waste, which obviously is lighter, and the representation of those vehicles that we bought is just under 10% of the whole fleet, and those are the vehicles that needed replacing now, and hence why the funding was put in the budget prior to this administration. What I am working with the officers over as we review the condition of the waste fleet vehicles is when we need to replace them, or as we need to replace them, we will be looking at non-diesel type fuels. It might not be electric, it could be hydrogen, for example. So I can absolutely say to you, it is on our agenda. We are definitely looking for that. Turning to the grounds maintenance, we already have just bought our first electric vehicle, and where we have the facilities, the infrastructure, and Mr. Salmon's comments on this earlier on, we will be looking to try and hire in electric vehicles. We've changed the framework contract that we're working on to a 30-day contract rather than a purchase hire by day, which we think puts us in a better position, more leverage in being able to say to the companies, these are the vehicles we want, electric vehicle over diesel, for example. So we're on side, we're saying the same thing, and it's the practicalities of what we can achieve, but it is on the top of our agenda. Thank you.
If I may, just very quickly.
Yeah.
Just to say thank you, Mark, for those comments. I absolutely appreciate the difference between the maintenance vehicles and the waste vehicles. It's just it's quite stark after the discussion we had about maintenance vehicles to see this then, to have this decision being implemented, a previous decision being implemented in terms of the waste vehicles. And I think it's just, both councils have very ambitious climate targets. There's no point having climate targets unless you actually implement them, and purchasing 10 diesel waste vehicles that will be in service for a decade is not going to help us meet those targets. That's all I have to say. Thank you ever so much for your time, everybody.
I was just going to say, on the matters that were reported in, so in terms of the updates, did you have any comments specifically to do with the scrutiny committee on both reports that you saw there, which were the planning enforcement and the engagement and consultation report?
Well, that was the first set of comments I made, where I just generally wanted to commend officers and teams for the work that they're doing, and really emphasise that the scrutiny committee wanted there to be more positive publicity, particularly to share with the public the good work that's being done and when teams win awards and things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I would like to commend officers for the work there, and related cabinet members for all the work that they put in to getting this through to scrutiny. Thank you.
Chair, can I also add that the Joint Audit and Governance Committee met on the 3rd of October, and the thing that's relevant to your meeting today is that they considered the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 2022-23, confirmed that they were satisfied that the activities have been carried out in accordance with the strategy and policy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Foxall. So moving back to the agenda, we move on to the substantial portion of the agenda now. And item number 7, which will be introduced by Councillor Fulsham, the Corporate Performance Report and Climate Action Performance Report for Q1 23-24.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to bring this report to Cabinet. As has already been pointed out in this meeting, yes, we are looking back quite some way. It is quarter to July 23. And so, yes, we are having cast our minds back. This stretched from the period just before the election through to the early months of this administration. That is why when you look down at cabinet members responsible, you might think, hang on, I didn't think that was in my portfolio. It may well have been N months ago, or it may have been your predecessor in that role. So there is a huge amount of material here, and I think it's a good reflection of our ambition and our commitment to transparency, that we do set all our stall out. This is what we've been doing in those 3 months. It's not a case of us marking our own homework. It's saying, here's our work, here's our standards, mark it for us. And with that sort of say hand on heart, this is what we've done. There are areas we can do better, areas that we're really proud of. We've completed our actions on these. There are a number of them that are saying, no further action, this has already been completed. I'm very pleased to see this. I do take on board that it is hard looking back, going on for 6 months. And as we move through reviewing and coming forward with a new corporate plan, we are looking at a shorter reporting cycle that things will be more immediate, things will be more measured, so that we have a clear idea of just how we're doing. We end up with less wordy narrative reports. We can say, how's it felt? Here's the standard we set. Did we meet it? That's what we want to move to. But do dive into this report. It says a lot of very good things about our activities over this period. So I'm very glad to bring this to you.
Thank you, Councillor Horsham. No, I do agree with a lot of things you said there. The length of reporting time is a problem, and we've recognised that for a while now. It's not ideal that we are reporting now on things that happened sort of so much earlier in the year. However, just looking at the performance highlights of this report, it shows, it reflects our ideals and our objectives right across the board, providing the homes people need, tackling the climate emergency, building healthy communities, and building stable finances. We have contributed significantly in that period to all of those objectives, and I'm really proud. I'm very thankful to officers for achieving so much towards those goals. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Fawcett.
I have some comments. I'll start by agreeing with what both of you have already said, that overall this is a very positive report, and it shows a huge number of successes across many of the projects that we've been working on. But I've a few specific comments. First, on the providing homes people need, I think it would be helpful if we broke down the figure for the number of affordable housing completions into the different types of housing, because I think there is a difference between what I call so-called affordable housing under the government's definition, and actual affordable housing, for example, social rent housing. And I think just in terms of transparency, it will be useful to see that. It would be helpful to me, certainly. The second, which I think is a minor point, there's mention of a development on called Ock Valley Park. I'm now worried because Ock Valley's in my patch, and I'm not aware of any development. Is it meant to be just Valley Park?
I believe so.
Right, good. That's reassuring. That means other people won't be able to mislead the public on that one. And then the final comment, I suppose it's a general comment. Mostly this is written in understandable English, which ought to be the purpose. But there's still some, for want of a better word, officer speak creeping in, technical language creeping in. So my favourite paragraph is as follows: the Vales transformation programme designed to assist in assuring the council's financial stability. That bit I sort of understand. Is changing to provide a more people-centred approach to the proposed changes. The core transformation team is in the process of forming / evolving, including to its leadership and position within the policy and programme service area. Additional recruitment has also been approved to strengthen the support and assurance to the core transformation team and to assist in the delivery of the wider programme. I honestly haven't got a clue what that means. And I very much doubt any member of the public would either. So This is probably, I can probably rely on the fact that Andy wasn't responsible for this at the time. So if Andy could cast a member of the public eye over the text, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, yes.
I don't want that to detract from the very good job somebody or a team of people have done producing the report, which overall is excellent. But it's just keeping an eye on making sure it's in plain English.
It is funny you should say that, because Councillor Fulsham and I had quite a spontaneous discussion about the look of the feel of the new corporate plan. And when I look at our corporate plan as in its existence, I see the words before I see the content and what we are trying to do. And I find those words, which there are many, they hide the true meaning and intent. And we were going through quite brutally and crossing out all of the text and coming up with one word for each point. And by doing that, we conveyed a lot more meaning, and I think clarified how things could be put together better. Because if you start with a plan that has so many words, you are going to get a report with far more words. And so I think we need to make sure, be very conscious of what we mean and what we're trying to convey. We know that the general public are not really going to be poring over our corporate plans, regardless of how we put it. But what I would like to see is the clearest corporate plan we can possibly have, so there is some uptake from residents, so they can see what we're trying to do and they can see what we want to achieve for the next 4 years or so. So that's my heart's desire, and I really would like to make sure that we all work together to make that happen and make it much more clear. So, yes, they sprung that on you yesterday afternoon, and I do.
That's right. If I can come back, I'm completely on board with plain English. I've always had this approach that if you want somebody to read something, have it on one side of a piece of paper and in terms that anybody can pick up and make sense of. I got the feeling with the section that Councillor Fawcett read out that, yes, this is where I know the meaning of every single word there, and putting it together, it makes less sense than the individual words do. So I'm completely aware of the limitations, and I think, yes, we can start our journey towards something that's more accessible, more engageable by our residents, and I think we'll be all the better for it.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just a small comment, is just that we spend as a council money on consultants and whatnot, but sometimes spending money on good copy editing can go a long way. And that's just a comment for this, because it can go back into almost be scrutinised from a wording perspective, just like you've said. And actually the outcome is very strong to that point.
Yeah, I think the time and resources that are put into the plan initially and how we put this together is really important. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So we're noting that. Yeah, so is everybody noting? We're noting that item. Thank you. Put the glasses on and take them off again. So moving on to item number 8, introduced by Councillor Crawford. And item number 8 is the Treasury Management Outturn 2022-23. Councillor Crawford.
Thanks, Betty. So this report, which has already been considered by Joint Audit and Governance Committee, fulfils the legislative requirements to ensure adequate monitoring and reporting of the Council's Treasury Management activity. The report is backward-looking. Outturn report was covered the year up until the 31st of March 2023. As we heard, the Joint Audit and Governance Committee noted the report's contents and was satisfied that Treasury activities in the year were carried out in accordance with the Treasury Management Strategy and Policy. Treasury performance is summarised on the table on page 118. the papers in front of you, and it shows that against a budget of 0.5 million, the council actually earned over 2.5 million. This significant overachievement of income, which is detailed in Appendix D, was primarily the result of the sharp rise in interest rates that occurred during 2022-23 as the Bank of England sought to tackle rising inflation, following in particular the start of the war in Ukraine in February of that year. Treasury performance did exceed benchmarks for the externally managed CCL property fund, whereas the council's internally managed investments underperformed against the 3-month sterling overnight index average, otherwise known as SONIA. This is not unexpected, as the council places many deposits over longer durations, so would only have been able to take advantage of increasing rates as those investments reach maturity. Firstly, it would be expected that the council will outperform the SONIA benchmark rate when, as expected, interest rates begin to fall for the same reasons. And I should also add there were no breaches of the counterparty limits or prudential indicators during the year. What we're doing here is I'm recommending that Cabinet notes the Treasury Management Report for 2022-23. Be satisfied that the Treasury activities are carried out in accordance with the Treasury Management Strategy and policy which we have, and further recommends to Council to approve the Treasury Management Outturn Report and approve the actual 2022-23 prudential indicators within the report. All a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully you're happy with that. I'm also happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments? You've done the sins assignment.
I will often do that, Chair, don't I? I worry whether it's because it's boring.
Councillor Cole's got a question.
I have a question.
Thank you.
So, obviously the interest rates of any kind of money that we have on account is benefiting the council. And my question is, does that include things like Section 106 monies and things like this?
Yeah, so
we would get
it's all the cash that we have for any particular reason. It might be grant funding that's coming in advance of us spending it. It might be Section 106 monies that we've collected, which we've not yet dispersed. Basically, we'll put it in one big pot and invest it as best we can, bearing in mind that we have to work out what our cash flow is going to be. So we can't put, all of that cash on very long-term 3-year fixed, for example, if we know that we're going to need some of it. So it's the whole host of different pots of cash, if you like. They have to work out how that is likely to be needed to be drawn down over the coming years, to determine how much is placed on relatively short term, kept overnight, for example, how much might be placed 3-month deposit, up to 2 years perhaps. But yes, it's all the cash including Section 6.
So when does those figures actually get updated then? And do they get updated annually?
So which figures?
So at the moment we have numbers about kind of what amounts we have on account from Section 106 months. That's something that's very due to mine now. And the actual figures that we have reported are the figures that are paid in by the developers.
Yeah.
So those interest rate figures haven't yet necessarily been reflected. I'm just wondering when.
So we no council in the country, as far as I'm aware, when it's earning interest on the Section 106 monies that we have collected, then adds whatever that Section 106 money has earned in interest to the pot. See what I mean?
Oh, I see.
It doesn't work like that. Partly because it would be so massively complicated to it. You need a team of people to work out how to allocate, individual little pots of Section 106 money. How much interest does that particular pot accrue? So I'm happy to be corrected by Simon Hewing.
He's just here.
Oh, there you are. I'm happy to be corrected by Simon on that. I don't think there's any councils in the country that do that.
The only situations I'm aware of are where the Section 106 agreement, and I have seen them, admittedly in a previous authority, not here, where the Section 106 agreement requires the council to add interest to the balance. But generally speaking, Andy's right. It's a case of, because effectively the council's not just necessarily taking the benefit, but it's also at different times taking the risk. And what I would also say is obviously a lot of those payments made by developers are index linked at the time they pay them, so that the 106 agreement might be for X £1,000 at the date it's written, but at the time they pay, those payments themselves are index linked, and we get paid the index linked amount when they actually make their contributions.
No, it's just on that point. I mean, I think we need to be conscious that this, if you like, this report is the upside of interest rates going up, and interest rates are going up because inflation's gone up. And the downside is that on the other side of our budget, there's lots of prices going up, and that actually can create an issue with, say, section 106. If a developer, for example, had paid us 20k to pay for 2 items of playground equipment 5 years ago, those 2 items of playground equipment might now cost 30k. And so it's swings and roundabouts, but it is good that we have the swings as well as the roundabouts.
Glad you injected a creative comedy in there. Thank you very much, Councillor Forster. Councillor Forsham.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Crawford, for an encouraging report. It is good to see our council's financial position improving steadily, in part due to good performance on the Treasury management side. I know that this is in stark contrast to some of our neighbouring councils, a number of whom have had to declare effective bankruptcy, and some have taken unusual measures such as moving into shopping centres that they own in preference to their offices. To what extent are we exposed in our Treasury management activities to inadvisable decisions by other authorities to whom we've placed money on deposit? Is there any risk that their financial woes will impact us in terms of getting our money back at the end of the term of their loan?
I guess you're referring to deposits that we might have made with other authorities.
Indeed,
that are
yeah.
currently struggling. I don't believe we're exposed at all. That our chief financial officer will confirm that, but I don't think there's any risk whatsoever.
We certainly don't believe we are. The councils in question are still legally obliged to settle their debts, and ultimately all councils are at the end backed by the UK government. So we do not perceive, where we have made deposits with councils that are struggling. We have made contact with them and have received assurances that our money will be paid back on time.
Can I maybe just add that it's a valid question, and as much as I've been here long enough to remember many years ago when we placed some monies with the Icelandic banks, which were paying really high rates of interest. Any bank that pays really high rates of interest, any banker will tell you there's something wrong with them. And as a result, a number of those banks went down. I think both we and the South Oxfordshire District Council both had deposits with them, which whether we actually got it all back in the end, I'm not sure. We got a substantial amount back, but that is a fundamental part of the treasury management strategy, is to make sure that our counterparty limits are appropriate at all times, and that we minimise the risk and we don't place deposits with an organisation that might face financial difficulties and then go bankrupt.
Thank you. I think there's a lot of good points raised there, and particularly, sorry, go on, you can go and ask some.
I know you're disappointed because I didn't ask a question previously. It's on investments, and those who've listened into the cabinet before will know that I always try and be educated on at least one point. So my question is on page 130, land and property, where we talk about the amount of money, the equivalent to a gross return of 4.68%, which is not that bad really. But the paragraph underneath it says, due to movements in property values and exclusion of whole life costs, these rates of return should not be taken as direct comparison with other classes of investment. I just wonder, to what degree can we determine how much we have in property investments? Because I guess a lot of it is things like this building, our parks, for example, that we actually almost have no option but to own. So the money is not what I would call really an investment. It's more about having to own those properties for the business that we work. Or could we just choose to sell off those properties, rent them out, and invest the money elsewhere?
I think there's a distinction between our investment properties and our operational properties.
Okay.
So where we, for example, own the freehold of an industrial unit, they're not very far away from here.
Yeah.
And that is part of our investment portfolio. We charge a rent, hopefully we collect a rent as long as it's occupied and the rent is being paid. That's a totally different animal from any operational property we might have, such as a car park.
Okay, so it's kind of almost the discretionary pieces where we have chosen to own a retail outfit or something. And
that's right. Well, that is different from saying we might at some point make an operational asset into an investment asset and generate income from it. But maybe Simon wants to add a bit more.
Which I think we might actually be doing with the new council building to some degree, because we're looking to have some retail in that building, and we're not.
Well, this council wouldn't be in that instance. It's actually south. That's a south project, of which Vale would be a tenant. But even in the case of that building, I think this is specifically talking about investment properties, and they are, in accounting terms, very, very closely defined as to what classifies an investment property. And it is one that is basically held to make money only. Okay. So even in that case, the project that South are doing with their building is actually to support regeneration, provide an office building, and if you like, in that sense, the commercial bit of that building is incidental to the main purpose. So that wouldn't class as a commercial property either. What we're talking about here is a very to be fair, compared to a lot of councils, quite a small portfolio of investment property. Given the current rules and regulations, it's not actually a portfolio that can grow now, because we're not actually allowed to buy properties primarily for investment anyway. So this is about our legacy holding of these assets, which is part of the strategic property team's work. They'll continually review whether it's still worth us holding them.
Thank you.
So the government has changed the rules quite significantly about what councils can do.
Yeah.
In part because some councils are cold in over extending themselves, pouring money sometimes to making investments to make money, which might have been successful for a year, but when an economic downturn comes along, which it can do, can create significant problems, which a number of councils have had to face.
Thank you. Duly educated. Thank you.
Yeah,
So just for my own clarity, so this would include properties like the precinct here in Abingdon and the upper reaches.
I can't. It depends whether we're holding them for regen or for commercial property aspirations. I'm thinking particularly the upper reaches might be more of a regen. The precinct, again, it's not just commercial tenants in the precinct. In fact, actually, the precinct has actually been disposed of as a long lease anyway, so it's not in these.
So it does include long leases.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Anything further?
Unless I've had 10 times more questions this time than I normally get.
You started something, Councillor Cole. No, I was going to say it's very good that we've had this discussion, and as I was going to say before, is that lots of very useful points have come up, and I think the point about inflation working both ways is something that we are very conscious of, and that's really important. And I also wanted to express my gratitude for all of those of you who are involved in monitoring and making sure that yes, our investments are sensible and we are working within a fixed range of risk. Thank you. I'm very conscious of that. So thank you very much. Now we've been asked to note that. So is everybody happy to note that? Sorry, I haven't got the
approving the recommendations on page 115, including the recommendation accounts.
Thank you. So would you like me to read those out? Okay.
And you've read them out already, isn't it?
Okay. So are we happy that Cabinet notes the Treasury Management Outturn Report 23, and we are satisfied that the Treasury activities are carried out in accordance with the Treasury Management Strategy and Policy. We noted those, and that we recommend to approve the Treasury Management Outturn Report and approve the actual 22-23 prudential indicators within the report. That's recommending it to Council. Is everybody happy to do that? Thank you very much. So now, an Andy show today. Then we're going straight back on with Andy, Councillor Crawford, who I item number 9, budget monitoring, April 2023 to June 2023. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. So this is the budget monitoring for the first 3 months of the year, a little bit like the corporate plan. It's probably here slightly later than I would have ideally hoped, but there you go. So the report reviews the council's revenue and capital expenditure performance against the budget of this year for the first 3 months to June. Cabinet will recall, at least those members of Cabinet who were members of Cabinet at the time, that the budget for 23-24 was agreed by Council on the 15th of February. The revenue budget, as outlined in paragraph 4 of this report, was set at 17.4 million, which then increased to 18.8, the increase reflecting the carry forward of unspent one-off project budgets from the prior year and from some specific grant-funded budgets that came in. In terms of revenue, as explained in paragraph 5, table 1, the forecast is for a small underspend of just 42,000. However, as identified in paragraph 7, just under £700,000 of projected carry forwards of one-off budgets, leaving an overall overspend of around £700,000. However, as I also identified in paragraph 7, interest income is likely to exceed budget, perhaps significantly exceed budget, as interest rates are expected to remain higher for longer, and it is anticipated that this additional income will offset the increased expenditure. This, of course, will be continued to be closely monitored during the year. On capital, the budgeted approval programme at the end of June was, as detailed in paragraph 15, just over 31.5 million, against which 2.4 million, just 2.4 million, has been spent. Capital budgets have not been reviewed for this report. A full review of the current capital programme is underway, and the outcome of this will be reflected in the future budget monitoring reports and hopefully in the annual budget that we present in February of next year. I'm simply recommending the Cabinet notes this report.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Now it's silent. Well, I would like to thank you for this favour, this report, and the ongoing work that is in producing this, the monitoring. I would like to thank officers and recommend that we note this report. Everybody happy?
Agreed.
Yeah. So that's the final item of the agenda. So I can draw this to a close. So thank you